Hey, what's going on, AP guys? We have the War of 1812 for you, and I'm only going to focus on stuff that will appear on your APUSH exam, or that could appear on your APUSH exam. There's a lot more to the war than what I'm going to talk about in here, but I'm only concerned with you knowing what you need to know for the War of 1812. So let's get started. Leading up to the War of 1812, one of the biggest causes for this war is going to be that America's neutrality is or was violated. And both France, with something called the Berlin Decree, and England with something called the Orders in Council, both of these countries would confiscate U.S. ships that traded with the other country. So if the U.S. had a ship going to Europe to trade, it would France, if they could, would make it stop in their ports first to make sure they weren't trading with England, and England would do the same thing, making sure they wouldn't trade with France. And keep in mind that France controlled a lot of Europe during this time, so the U.S. feels like they are caught in the middle. And to help fight Napoleon, Britain began using something called impressment on U.S. sailors, which is essentially forcing sailors to join the British Navy. Oftentimes, they would kidnap sailors or merchants. The British Navy would board the ships and forcibly kidnap them and force them to join the British Navy. And as many as about 6,000 Americans were kidnapped this way, and many of them died. A major incident that happens is called the Chesapeake Leopold Affair, or the Chesapeake Incident, or the Chesapeake Leopold Incident. A British ship that was the Leopold attacks a U.S. ship called the Chesapeake while looking for alleged deserters. So the British captain of the Leopold is convinced that the Chesapeake has some British naval officers on there, so they attack this ship. Three were killed, 3 Americans were killed, and 18 Americans were injured as well. So this is a clear violation of America's neutrality. Now we're going to lead into some embargoes that you must know. There's going to be 3 of them. And the first one is the Embargo Act of 1807. This is during President Jefferson's administration, and this was passed in response to the Chesapeake incident. So the U.S. wanted other countries, particularly England and France, to start respecting their rights. So one way they did this was by forbidding every single U.S. export. They would not allow the U.S. to trade with any other countries. And this is very interesting because Jefferson, who believed that agrarians or farmers should be the backbone of the country, he helps inadvertently start the Industrial Revolution in America because now America needs to make a lot of their own supplies. This is a very famous political cartoon. If you look at embargo backwards, it is spelled "oh grab me." So this guy is saying, "Dang it, how he nicks 'em! Oh, this cursed oh grab me." So this embargo is actually hurting New England merchants, and many of these New Englanders are going to be Federalists, which we will see in a little bit how that comes into play. This is a huge disaster. It hurts the U.S. economically. So 2 years later, we have something called the Non-Intercourse Act, which is the same idea of having a ban on exports, except this time every country the U.S. can export to, except for Britain and France. So the theory is we're opening up to more countries, but in reality it still hurts quite a bit because Britain and France controlled a lot of countries and they were a huge trading partner of the United States. Still a disaster. 1 year later we have Macon's Bill number 2, which there's a lot of stipulations in it, but basically the end result is the U.S. begins to trade with France. England is shut out as a result of Macon's Bill number 2, and England is going to be very upset with the U.S. Okay, so why war with Great Britain and not France? France is kind of violating the U.S.'s neutrality rights as well. Well, there's a couple reasons. One, we have a group of people called war hawks, and the leaders of this group were from South Carolina and Kentucky, the South and what was the West at that time, Kentucky. John C. Calhoun and Henry Clay, these two guys, my favorite politician ever, Henry Clay here from Kentucky and John C. Calhoun from South Carolina. They wanted war with Great Britain. They were Democratic Republicans at this time, and they were Jeffersonians, and many people who were Jeffersonians were more biased towards France than Great Britain, so they had no allegiance to Great Britain. Foreign policy-wise, they were closer with France, and they didn't want to declare war on France. And British impressments were well known, they were visible, it was clear, many Americans knew what was going on. So those are the reasons why the U.S. went to war with Great Britain over France. So some key battles and events of the war. During this time, we'll also see that Native Americans in the U.S. are fighting. And the Battle of Tippecanoe is an important battle to know. William Henry Harrison defeated Native Americans. He was from Ohio, and he defeated a group of Native Americans at this battle. And it helped lead to further westward expansion. And later on, when he's president, he's going to run on a slogan, Tippecanoe and Tyler too. So reinforcing this idea of the Battle of Tippecanoe. At the end of the war, we have something called the Hartford Convention, which is so important. I've seen this appear multiple times for multiple choice questions on the AP exam. New England Federalists, a group of New England Federalists, gather to share their grievances, and this is happening when the war is ending. And they proposed amending the Constitution in the following ways. One, that the president could only run for one term. They also believe that two-thirds of Congress should have to approve an embargo or declare war instead of the 51%. So they really wanted to make sure that a war would not happen again without their consent. And some of these delegates even urged secession, and this was a huge disaster for the Federalist Party. This is the death blow or the death knell to the Federalist Party. You need to know that. Another very important battle is the Battle of New Orleans. This occurs 2 weeks after the war ended. This is in January, and it took a long time for word to get there. The U.S. is victorious. Andrew Jackson is an overnight sensation. It was an absolute bloodbath on the British side. They lost something like 2,000 soldiers, 2,000 casualties, while the U.S. only had 70. Andrew Jackson completely whoops the British. The Treaty of Ghent is the treaty that ended the war. Some of the commissioners were Henry Clay, who also helped start the war. He helped end the war. Secretary of Treasury Albert Gallatin, and John Quincy Adams. So very high-profile U.S. diplomats went to what is present-day Belgium to negotiate the end of this treaty. It was signed on December 24th, 1814, again 2 weeks before the Battle of New Orleans. It was an agreement to stop fighting, which simply means that's an armistice, and neither side gained any territory, and there were no mention of pre-war grievances. So there was no mention of impressment. There was no mention of the Native Americans being armed by the British. So basically, it's almost as if the war never happened. So what is the impact of the war? Well, there's a huge increase in nationalism. The country is becoming united at this time. This helped pave the way for future presidents such as Andrew Jackson and William Henry Harrison. And it also was the demise of the Federalist Party because of the Hartford Convention. I can't stress that enough, guys. You need to know the Hartford Convention leads to the demise of the Federalist Party. And it also paves the way for this president, James Monroe, the fifth president, in what is known as the era of good feelings. All right, that's it for the War of 1812. What I would like you to do is take a look at this picture and tell me in the comments below what is going on here. What is this depicting? And please help spread the word. Leave comments below, questions. You want me to elaborate on anything, please feel free to add that in. And if you have not already, please subscribe and share this on Facebook, Twitter, and anywhere else. I appreciate you guys watching. Hope I cleared some things up. Have a good day, guys.